Hi guys, my name's Seb Tudor, I'm the man on the Silver Mountain and welcome back. Today I wanted to talk about something that I've mentioned a few times but never really explained, and that is DISC, and that is a model, behaviour assessment model that I use as a tool to help myself understand clients, to help myself understand me, to help my clients understand themselves. And so the first thing I just wanted to touch on was a little bit of background, because the background for this model is really interesting, or at least it is to me. So you just have to deal with it whilst I talk through this stuff. Ultimately, it's a behavioural assessment based around a model created by William Moulton Marsden, who was not only he was a lawyer and a psychologist, but he had a awesome run of doing stuff in his life. Not only did he create this model for DISC and write self-help books, as many individuals do, but also he was involved in and contributed quite substantially to the first polygraph test, lie detector test, and also during his time he was the dude who created Wonder Woman. You know, very varied set of things that this guy did, and he was awesome. But he came up with this first model whereby which centers around the idea that everyone's behaviors, everyone's various states and behaviors sit around these four main behavioral traits, which are dominance, influence, submission or supportiveness, and compliance, and or compliance or conformity. And excuse me. And as a result, though, this was some of his initial stuff that he put together, and as a result, said that this was very much that these behavioural types came from people's sense of self and the way that they interacted with their environment. And that's why when I do a DISC profile with someone, I get three little graphs, and one of them is someone's kind of internal perceptions and so on, and then the other is their perception of themselves within that environment, or what other people see within of them in that environment, and then the last one is how they act under stress in that environment. And that's why usually when giving someone a profile, because these, unlike certain other things like Myers-Briggs, this one has a much more accepting state of or accepting attitude towards the fact that people change over time. And as a result, with DISC, it's a case of when I'm giving someone the assessment to do, I will tell them to think of themselves within the situation that they want to deal with. So most of the time it's work, so they have to think of themselves within work as they answer the various questions and things, because that way you get an active, a much more accurate and kind of specific reading on whether or not they're on how they work within that environment. Because as said, it's to do not only with their sense of self, but the way that they are interacting with the place and the environment that they are in. However, then he also added in some other bits and pieces, and then this kind of got left to rumble around for a while until it was picked up by an industrial psychologist working within industry, who wanted to use it as a kind of tool for self-description, so that you could analyze whether or not people would be good for certain roles, and whether or not the basic patterns observed would be conducive to doing certain things. And as a result, he took on this system and he put it all together, and it got continually worked on by numerous people over time anyway, and now it's published by lots of different people. There are lots of different forms of this basic model being put into an assessment. But the overall way it works is that after answering these various questions, it will give you a reading on whether on the levels of your D, I, S, and C, and these things, will allow, for example, myself to note patterns in your behavior or patterns in your self-perception and the perception that you of how you put yourself across to others and within your own stress environment. It'll allow us to gain some insight. And I love doing this because I was also able to see a change in myself when I moved from doing management and corporate work into doing coaching. And to begin with, when I was doing management and corporate work, I was very much a high D and a high I, but my D was higher than my I. And as a result, it was a case of I was very directive. I wanted the job done. I was very much more to do with that than I was to do with the conversing side, but I was less S and less C. I didn't care about supporting people, and I didn't care about the mechanisms and the rule sets in regards to getting stuff done. I just wanted it done. Then when I come across to now, my I and D had moved slightly, S had moved up a little bit, and C was still rock bottom because I don't care about mechanics as long as the job gets done. But I'm it's interesting to see that change, because also within the framework you've got D and I are both counted as active behavior sets. S and C are seen as inactive, and then you've got task-based versus people-based, where D and C are task-based and I and S are seen as people-based. And as a result, it allows us to take a look and kind of see how people work. And as said, these are broad, very open kind of generalizations of people, but at the same time, because they're so simple and because they focus on these very simple kind of innate sets of behaviors and patterns in people, they're really, they highlight things that people otherwise may miss, and they usually tend to be fairly accurate to one extent or another, and not in a kind of cold reading way, because you have actively provided information into a matrix that has then pumped out this stuff, which is demonstrated. All it does is spell out you, and it's stuff that you may not have known about you, and as a result, there it is on a piece of paper in front of you to go through. But breaking down the four different things is, do you know what? That's something I think I might do in another video. So that's a little brief history and a little brief explanation about DISC. I'm sure I will, as I said, I'll do a video on each of the different four behavioral traits, and I'll probably do a couple of other bits and pieces around this as well, because DISC is a lot of fun and it's something that sits in introspection, that is such a worthwhile tool for people just to get to know themselves or to understand themselves a bit better. And so I'll do some more on this in the future. But the one thing that I would say is that this also got carried over into a lot of other stuff, which I will definitely do on the channel in the future at some point. Especially stuff in regards to both the management side of things and leadership, and understanding how each one of these different behavioral people who have these different behavioral traits as their most dominant trait can still be good and effective leaders. But also in regards to the dating scene, because obviously you can imagine that people who have these differing traits, some higher, some lower, and so on and so forth, may not mesh very well, or sometimes they'll mesh very well. But as a result, if you found this informative, if you liked what I was talking about, then please drop me a like, and drop me a comment down in the comments below if you'd be interested in taking one of these tests. If you find it really interesting and stuff like that. If you've done one before, or if you've bumped into other things that are similar, like Myers-Briggs, and what were your opinions of those. But yeah, otherwise, drop me a like for more, drop me a subscribe if you want to be notified, and then yeah, take care guys, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care.